This is Conspiracies Unpacked. My name is Danny Clayton, and we are about to look at time travel. Have humans done it? Now, the internet is filled with different pieces of evidence suggesting that we have, with 100-year-old pictures featuring people which appear to be using smartphones, the uncanny plot lines of The Simpsons, and of course, one of my personal favorites, an actual photo of Greta Thunberg from 100 years ago. Evidence that we've time traveled? Possibly. Dr. Richard Hames, time travel is not exactly a new concept. Do you think that there is more or less evidence to suggest that humans have actually done it?
I think there is evidence that we might be able to travel in time, because if you go by Einstein, in terms of science, the theory is the faster you go through space, then the slower you go through time. So you could claim that present-day astronauts are time travelers. But in terms of the science fiction, then we're a long way short of that, being able to travel those distances over time, or that amount of time. Probably not. I think we'd need a real breakthrough in understanding how to do that before that was even possible.
I mean, Michael J. Fox has done it. Austin Powers has done it. How far-fetched are those theories? Like, is it completely impossible that we could travel back in time that far?
I don't think it is, you see, because if you look at the extraordinary literature around science fiction, it's amazing how often science fiction eventually becomes science fact. And the thing that the best scientists in the world do is they play with ideas. They're very creative. And Hawking himself was very playful indeed, of course. Stephen Hawking, I mean. So that as a possibility, I think it is plausible. It is a possibility, yes. To go back in time, I wouldn't say to go into the future, but to go back in time also, we'd need to be able to travel faster than the speed of light.
So you mentioned Stephen Hawking. He did have one of the most miserable parties of all time when he invited a bunch of time travelers to party with him the day after he threw the party. So he sat alone in his home and then the next day put out the invitations. Does that make it seem like people from the future didn't get his invitation, or are they just not interested in hanging out with Stephen Hawking?
I think the latter, probably.
How about the grandfather paradox, which suggests that if you could time travel and you went back in time and killed your grandfather, it would mean that you wouldn't be born, therefore couldn't travel back in time to kill your grandfather. What do you make of that? How do you get your head around that one?
Well, the only solution there, of course, is to use parallel universes where you could actually commit the event in one universe and then travel to the other universe to get back. So it's plausible in that sense.
And if we were to put the multi-universe into a nutshell, what's the concept behind that?
That there are numerous universes, yes, well, that's entirely possible as well. I certainly wouldn't rule that out of theory. Whether we'll actually ever be able to prove that or use that is a different kettle of fish totally.
Now, I mean, this is going to be a bit of a pointy question, Richard. That is, you yourself have predicted very important world events like 9/11, the global GVC. Have you travelled into the future, perchance?
No, I haven't. I'd like to. I really would love to be able to do that, but I must admit I haven't. I've often thought that I might be alien. I feel so much of an outsider sometimes, and perhaps originated somewhere else in a distant time, in a distant galaxy, but not in terms of the future, Danny.
Okay, well, I'm glad we cleared that one up. Final question, as always, how plausible is it that humans have time travelled?
You could argue that time travel is possible today, not in the science fiction form, but plausible.
Okay, so is time travel plausible? Yes, highly. Maybe a few fractions of a second, but is it plausible for many, many, many years? Unlikely, but apparently still plausible.